Welcome, everybody. This is Denny with Why Is This True? And joining me today is Theresa Talea, who lives not too
Talea.
far. Talea?
Talea.
Talea. Okay, Talea. And we almost did an in-person interview, but circumstances conspired, so we ended up doing it on Skype. But the reason I'm interviewing Theresa today is because she wrote this book, The Eternal Humans and the Finite Gods, How an Ex-Prophet and I Left Religion and Discovered Universes Beyond and Within. And this is the third edition, which I did read, cover to cover. And so what I want to do real quick before we go to Theresa is just read the bio that she sent over to kind of set the stage for us and what we're going to be talking about today. So Theresa Talea bravely exposes the realms and identities of the gods and angels in the large third edition of Eternal Humans and Finite Gods, and how an ex-prophet and I left religion and discovered universes beyond and within. She grew up the daughter of a prophet, receiving numerous prophecies until she gradually realized the messages and their sources were not what they appeared to be. Her quest for truth, no matter how difficult the path, uncovered a multitude of layers in not only herself, but also the cosmos and beyond. She presents significant histories of the Earth and the Milky Way galaxy, showing our position and options towards a proactive and hopeful future. This groundbreaking book was written for people who want profound love and truth. It critically and fairly analyzes prevalent religions, the New Age, scientific beliefs, bringing them to face their similarities and inherent contradictions, and push past their self-imposed limits to relatively new ideas. These ideas are based on pre-existing knowledge that our current paradigms have largely forgotten. Theresa believes knowledge is power, and the insightful information she provides will connect the dots that her predecessors misrepresented or left unanswered. She does not use the word truth lightly. This book's bold assertions are based in reality. It is up to the reader to choose to accept reality while learning to gain lasting love and strength, or to lose oneself to the sleeper state of religious and spiritual programming that disempowers who we really are as fundamentally eternal beings. Theresa's smaller book, the second edition of Proposing a New Cosmology Beyond Death and Science, concisely analyzes cosmological theories of both mainstream physics and New Age spirit science, and reveals their ideas of oneness as short-sighted and ultimately unrealistic. She introduces another paradigm of distinct eternal energies existing before and beyond the varying fragmented creations in our experiential reality. This book is tailored to the skeptical public and scientific community. And then we'll post in this description to this video, and probably in the video itself her website, rediscoverypress.com. So thank you for listening to all that, even though you wrote it. And thanks for joining me today, Theresa. I really appreciate it.
Thank you so much for having me here.
All right. You're welcome.
So would you like me to start, or did you want to ask some questions first?
No, I think just go ahead and start, because I know you prepared for this and you had some things that you wanted to talk about. So that I invite you to do that.
Okay, I'll do my best.
Okay.
And if I'm only touching upon a few things, I request that you refer to the large book that he gave most of the summary for in the introduction. I would like to say that the primary theme of my mission is to empower people through the increased awareness of ourselves and our environment, which involves keen discernment between truth and lies. Today, I would like to discuss our conditioned inferiority and helplessness, and how prevalent spiritual perspectives rely on this theme, either overtly or covertly, to control us. We are conditioned since childhood to serve and submit to authority figures, to where we start living for their approval and guidance, as well as that of others. This basically trains us to live externally and to put parts of our internal aspects outward, looking beyond and fragmenting us, essentially, to where we start perceiving ourselves as inferior and incapable of living our own lives. Surely we don't know everything in our cosmos and immediate reality, so it is good to learn from others, but not at the expense of our true self, of our inner reaction, our intuitive knowing. I aim to do is bring out that intuitive knowing to let us all know that we don't have to willingly and blindly just give ourselves away to otherworldly beings, to big messages from the beyond, as if they are so much better than we are. Because we have a fundamental template that does make us complete beings. Even if they aren't fully activated right now in our present reality, they're still there. We just have to work a little harder to bridge those gaps and to get there. Religious followers willingly open ourselves up to those gods. And my mother did the same. She was a Catholic, and at 20 years old, she had a type of baptism by fire experience. That's what they call it. And it was probably a type of Kundalini experience where she felt all of her chakras and her whole body just burn, basically. And when people have religious experiences, everyone's unique. So her parts of her body got activated to that Jesus group of God and Son and the Trinity dualism. I go through all that in my book to show the different stages and factions of Christianity. So it can be 1 or 3 or sometimes 2, Holy Spirit, all that. So anyways, I just call it the Jesus group. So she also had her third eye opened. And so she was pretty much immediately after that experience with this Catholic prayer group, she was receiving these messages, these words in her mind, telling her what to do, giving her futuristic type of scenarios. And she also would hear words, and they'd call her name a lot, and they'd wake her up during the night, tell her what to do. So for decades, she became their prophet, getting tons of prophecies, and I grew up with that. And I was a devout Catholic, and I started depending on these prophecies because we're told to submit and obey, again, that theme, to our God, and to essentially be his hands and feet. So my mother was literally the hands and feet, where she could, like, her eyes were basically being used for him to see through her and for her to do what he said. I remember when she was actually forcefully moved, and her eyes were just widened with fear. And she went to my room, and she was just giving a verbal prophecy to me for whatever need. But I could tell that she was not a willing participant in that. So over time, many years, I just started probing more. And I noticed a lot of inconsistencies, a lot of fumbling around, a lot of holes in these prophecies. And we were bouncing from church to church. And then, I was analyzing stuff with the actual religion itself, reading the Bible more, and just seeing just this thread of people. Well, first of all, the pastors had their own type of arrogance, I'll say, and they would not want to listen to us because we were women, and that they were the proper hierarchy, God first, then them, then us. And so we're like, okay, well, great. But so with all that, then these prophecies were saying, well, I have more for you. Like, I have more to tell you. Like, you've come out through this, like, more heathen side of the Christian religion. So I'll share more of this mystery and who I am and what we are and all this. And so I was like, oh, this is interesting. And so around that time, I also started researching more on my own and on the internet about the New Age side and the beliefs there. And so, and then other types of entities affiliated with the Jesus group, which I also divulge in my book, were coming through and making other claims. And I'm just going, oh, wow. One said that your daughter has wisdom. And I'm like, and she has me, as if that entity was wisdom. I go, no, I have myself. I have my own inner wisdom. So, okay, so just a lot of red flags were going on in my mind. Like, why are all of these different entities, similar or the same, just, elevating themselves consistently and making it out to where I am not me, but I am their extension, or I'm now with them and I can do better things because of them. And that's just the prevalent theme. So I then as I said, was researching more and more to just, I started distancing myself from a lot of these, what we're being told. And my mom did too. We were just pretty much every day having really in-depth conversations and just questioning pretty much everything. So I put the whole process in my book for people who might want to see a step-by-step process of how I questioned and went through that. So with my mom, she retained her third eye, her open third eye ability, but she does not recommend that people have this, because when it's open, you cannot choose what you want to see. Pretty much everything's out there. It's like you can't be like, oh yeah, I only want that, and then and somehow that's only good when it's all there. And so she's learned to go within more to, as people say, that the six chakras, the third eye, that it's actually cones put into the sixth chakra, cones outward. So if you see some diagrams, you can see some where they are, the top of the crown and bottom, and those cones are extensions to the outside. And I posit that manipulative entities put them there so that they could more easily implant thoughts and images into us. So on our own, our chakra is this energetic interdimensional capsule in certain areas of our body, not entirely vertical, but near. And the sixth one corresponds with the pineal gland, and that does have light receptors and some type of visual ability. So my mother now uses that, and that's what I use naturally, and that's what we all can develop on our own because it's part of our own anatomy. It's just, and to me, it's definitely a lot more protected, and you won't get these like magnificent images, but I argue that we shouldn't want them because they can be quite manipulative. So with that, I would like to say that it is important to not give oneself away to being a prophet, a channeler, a medium, as well as allowing any type of entity into our field and body. It's just plain dangerous. I explain why, and I'll try to explain somewhat why in this interview. We, as I said, with our foundational template, we have our own compositional energetic capacity, and I call it natural light quotient, which is naturally a part of us, and it's our natural energy and matter integrity. That allows us to naturally ascend on our own, either after death, which is the common way, or with our body in the uncommon scenario that is around this time that I also talk about in the book. And so there's a potential there. So it's imperative to maintain as much natural light quotient as we can and to not just readily give it away. When we offer ourselves up to another entity, they attach themselves to our energetic body. They can, in rare, thankfully, circumstances, fully possess the being. And they, which I argue because I talk about their nature, they can take away from our natural essence in doing so. And so the God and angel guides, and the religions, they say that we need them to ascend, that we can't do this on our own. Well, our natural light quotient, when we retain enough of it, we can do this on our own. So what am I saying here? This story of us needing, again, an external entity is drilled into our consciousness. And because we have already learned since childhood, like I said, to that we're inferior, that we're incapable, we don't have much self-esteem. On top of that, we go through so many abuses and have illnesses and already feel fragmented and we unfortunately don't feel capable, and it's hard for us to really bring out our fullness inside. But we can when we really focus inward. It's just that we haven't really been conditioned enough to focus inward. We haven't really been taught enough to focus inward. And so when we go within our body and do not allow access to these beings to come and influence and manipulate and give us images and thoughts and we can start feeling our own inner aspects, and we can start creating a dialogue between our own layers, because our body has its own consciousness. Every aspect in us has a beautiful consciousness that is kind of crying out in its own way, either via an emotion or a physical pain or a physical joy or something going on, a nervous issue. And so when you listen to it, you can start, you start allowing this flow, and then you kind of bring it together and start aligning these layers to where there starts having a clear communication to your inner core, your very foundational essence that has your larger DNA template that I talk about, that has your more natural structural integrity deep within. And you can start building these bridges to that and really feeling that flow from the inside out. And so I'm asking people, where is your anchor? Where are you putting your anchor? How do you define yourself? Are you saying, well, my identity is in my religion or in my action or in my race or in my something? Or are you saying, I am right here. I am within my body. My consciousness is here, and I will really learn and work hard to really know all of these beautiful energies within me and align them and be clear and have keen discernment between myself and what's external. So with these gods and angels, when they're saying that they're bigger than they are, more enormous, more capable, superior, all these different things, we can refer to them as light beings, or sometimes God, spirit, creator, source, like this big oversimplified something, when first of all there's different energies of light, there's different sources where things come from. And so just because we're here in this dimension, it doesn't mean like just right afterwards with death or whatever, it's just this like singular heaven or singular paradise, perfect place where everything exists and they can just give us all this enlightened information as though that's the end all be all. I have probed very, very deeply for pretty much most of my life to find something really pure. After enduring severe childhood abuse and just sadly hating my life in this world, but I could not give up because I still knew intuitively that something wonderful and beautiful existed. Even if people say I love you and it's not real love exists. Real truth, something strong and eternal does exist. So I have to find it. And so I pushed and pushed, and I analyzed all of these claims of these otherworldly entities. And when they're saying, oh, I'm everything, or I'm, this oneness belief, it's like it's kind of all together, and I'm this somehow illusory hologram, but as an extension of them, but then I'll be put back to them one day. I'll go back to them one day and be fullness, or it's just there's all these different ways of showing actually some division and some fragmentation, and then something beyond is my wholeness. There are actually distinct layers and levels, and so whatever is this somehow amalgamated, amazing something, realistically, it's not real. it's not real enough. It's like it's invalidating our own reality here, our own existence here. Even our bodies aren't being invalidated, and that's pretty much what religion says anyways. We're born of sin, and so we're fragmented. We just can't know, so we need them. It's this theme of nothing here is what we can count on, so just please save me and tell me what to do and tell me what to think. But there's enough to know that there's separation inherent in creation, that there's still life here to some degree. There's still beauty. There's still something here. So what is that? And is there a real that versus another veil or another layer? So the reality is that there is a very large number of different realms with many, many, many different entities and energies and compositions. And so to oversimplify it into one place just beyond is just not realistic. So I and my mother have learned and experienced that otherworldly entities do have their own bodies. They're just usually a lighter density than we have. It just doesn't mean that a lighter density is better. It's just a lighter density with another type of existence. And so we, as I was saying, that we have in our own density, we're already built with a foundational DNA template that unfortunately has been fragmented away. So it's like we only have 2 or potentially 2.5 fully assembled and fully activated DNA strands, when the human capacity is for more. And that is what I argue is deeper within our template that we have to build those bridges to for some partial ability, not full. But some of these entities, religious gods, angels, etc., they might have more of their DNA templates type of activated and assembled, but it doesn't mean they're still better. It actually, when they claim to be our gods and makers, perhaps they actually have meddled and distorted our foundational template to be the beings that we are, with all of the claims of, Jesus is the Son of God, and a lot of these human sons and I guess daughters of these entities, that there has been some genetic manipulation done to align us more genetically to them so that they can influence us more. And that is not necessarily a good thing. So there's certain Anunnaki and reptilian beings that claim especially to be our creators, and that show Ancient Aliens that I talked about with you. That is a big one, just constantly. It's like, why are we staying there? Why are we saying, oh, well then, wow, if they created us, then I guess they're our gods, so I'll listen to what they say and follow them. When let's really look into how they teach and how they are, and know that we are more than that still, that we are still built with more. And I guess you can't prove that per se, but there's still that inner knowing that I'm saying is more, that has more wholeness, that knows you matter, that knows that all that you are can be genuine and good and aligned and geared towards something pure and beautiful. And so if something's claimed, hey, I created you, but then their teachings and how they've acted and how they are, and there's a lot of subjugation and hierarchy, well, that's discordant to me. And I'm going to start questioning their claims. Like, why are we so readily believing what these other world entities say? If we start viewing them as other people, just like us, we can just see them in an equal way and go, well, I don't really think I need to believe that. So I'm going to go over here and do my thing and figure some more things out. Thank you, but no thank you. It shouldn't be really that hard. But we've been conditioned to feel like we have to believe that. My knowing did not resonate with some of the New Age teachings saying that everyone has multiple past lives, multiple higher selves, but my knowing didn't resonate with that. It actually made me feel more fragmented, more dizzy in my mind in a way that I was, like I said, like not fully here. I have an illusion of something bigger. I have many of myself out there. It's just, well, then what can I do? I'm incapable again. Like, I somehow don't matter that much then. But I knew I did. I knew I did. I knew my intuitive reactions to the abuses that I went through. I knew that I think all of us know that when we feel incapable in our bodies, it's very frustrating. We feel like we should have all of our mental faculties, our physical faculties. We are intuitively resisting this fragmentation. So when I utilized my core abilities of my senses and to me, it felt like a clear gauge within myself, because I knew I had a pure intention and a pure heart with this. I genuinely wanted to know what's going on. So I wasn't using my mind to fit something into my own worldview. I just pretty much put aside, and I've had like many mind-blowing moments. I'm like, oh my gosh. So with that, and I utilized my mom's core ability as well, since she has a bit more of a visual ability, but not with her third eye. She goes through her core and not her mind, and then goes through that pathway. And we both utilize it in our own way to basically get validation from eternal flowing energy, and that connected with my sense. And it validated that, yeah, I didn't have any past human life, and I only have one higher self that is unique to me. So I learned about this higher self. First of all, it was weird to me coming out of a Catholic and Christian. I became a fundamental Christian as I was going through the whole Christian factions. It became strange to me. It's like, what does this higher self mean? And it was higher dimensions. What? And when I realized, like, oh my gosh, like I've always felt like a stranger on Earth. I've always felt different. I've always felt like a kind of a philosopher and a deeper thinker, and that I can see kind of through people in a way at their purest essence in themselves, and treat that as the reality versus this death, chaotic reality here. Like, I somehow know this already, and it's not really earthly. So, okay, I guess I'm more than this. I've learned over time that my consciousness it's mine, but it was imparted by a higher dimensional being who came, and it's Talea. She came and left her solar system to reside in a nearby dimensional space to Earth. And many humans actually have this experience too, but not all. And in my developing fetus, in my mother's womb, just before, like, that body consciousness can, with its own inherent template, expand or infill its own consciousness. The higher self put a portion of her consciousness in me just before the human body could fulfill that in itself. And that means that she still retains her own full consciousness, but it also, whatever she's given to me, it's mine now. It's not like I'm pulling from her. I'm somehow like forever with her, but I should be. But it's still my choice. It's still within my body. It's my business now. And the more I am really with that true consciousness of me versus a false self that has been whittled down to basically nothing through abuse and subjugation and put downs and just so much of this world of what we're growing up into, when I am more with the fullness of my true me, then that blends with her consciousness, because consciousness extends beyond our physical body. In some way, there's an energy of it. It extends out through thought. It extends through intention, through desire. It still goes out beyond a little while. And so that there's this blending through in a lighter density in my more physical dense self. And so over time, I've pretty much mostly blended with her consciousness, but we're still physically separate. So yes, it's weird. I admit it. But a lot of beings felt that they had to do that because the Earth is already at a very precarious, dangerous position, having so many wars fighting for its control among all the God groups. And also, naturally, the Earth wants to go to its own consciousness. And so it's been embattled. It's been struggling. And so a lot of good intentioned, higher dimensional beings have done this higher self thing to help steer back, to help steer away how our human self has been manipulated by the God groups. They want to restore our genetic blueprint, our full DNA capacity. And in doing so, it's not just the consciousness that they've helped impart, it's an imprint of their actual energetic composition through our core. So there's an interface. And when we ascend and growing naturally through our own natural light quotient ability, either after death, if the body doesn't make it, we still have that within us that we can keep going, or with the natural ascension process that may happen. When we are able to go through the higher dimensions and transfigure to restore our DNA template and higher dimensional composition, when that's fulfilled in us, that is when the interface to our higher self can then complete the rest of the transfiguration through our core, and then the rest of our energy matter, which I combined energy, the hyphen matter, because it's just different densities of matter, that we transfigure to our higher self and be one. And I don't like that word one and oneness because a lot of the entities know this, and they say, oh, we're all one, we're one. Oh, I'm your higher self, or you're one with me. It's like they steer it away to their agendas and their perspectives. Can they do that in order to create a wedge between us and our actual innate higher self? It's an innate connection with our higher self, even though it's just largely separate to preserve its own self. I say largely because we still have that blending and of our consciousness, and they desire to create that wedge to separate, and then eventually have the aim of assimilating us to them, bringing our energies to them. And I say this because a lot of these gods, let's think about the God complex actually. What is it when someone wants to take a pre-existing flow of creation that's eternal, that already knows how to exist, and then take it in another direction and say, oh, well, yeah, I think I can do something better. Yeah, and I want to control my little domain. I want to do this. To me, that's a bit dangerous. And that how can you improve upon something that's already working so beautifully and so well and already has full and flowing connection to the actual origin, that has that already inbuilt in the template where you flow purely work with that. And so a God entity claiming itself as God will take a fragment of that, because you cannot just create something out of nothing. So take a fragment of what's already existing and use their technology to steer it into another area. And then all that new creation there has some distortion, and that God also distorted because they have cut themselves off from a measure of that eternal flow so that they can identify in this new realm that's a distorted realm. And so these beings are saying, yes, I've created you and I'm the God here, da da da. Well, you know what? I'd rather be in that prior flow and beautiful, open, eternal area where you truly are there. You truly have all of your faculties. You don't have to do the higher self, lower self thing. It doesn't actually exist there because it doesn't have that fragmentation. Death science-y netting between our DNA and between our, our mental capacities and our emotional capacities and with illnesses and all of these miasms and problems are these like just like veils and messed up structures that it's not the whole thing, but there's still enough of us, thankfully, here. Like, we're still here. We have life in us, but there's enough of the death science components really at war with that and sadly winning at times. And so I ask that people really start questioning what it is they are following and believing, and really read into every word that they say. And if there's any type of a narcissistic and dismissive and just rude or anything that just does not resonate with you inside, where you just intuitively go, oh, that doesn't feel right, then go with that. Go with you. And really honor yourself and probe further. To have, like we've talked about this, Denny, when you said like with them, the greatest lie is like 90% truth or something. And I said, well, if at best it's maybe 50% truth. But like they know certain things because they are created much later in the scheme of the big, not scheme, in the big picture. But because they have their own little niche, they're like, oh yeah, I'm everything, and so this is the way it is. But so they give us enough truth to we're like, yeah, that makes sense. But then they twist it to something else. And so I actually believe that they are more vampiric than beneficial, because our template does have life within it and the ability to guide itself. And so with how much they have fragmented and created their new realms and distanced themselves further and further away from the actual origin before creation, then they have become so cut off that they need more life to sustain them. It's more of an infinite versus eternal. Like people say fractals are infinite, but they're really not, because they're just a recycling of energy. And so when the energy fizzles out, when it can't create more form, then there's no more. It's not truly infinite. And so they have to keep drawing upon something that's living to keep their existence. So they choose. It's interesting because the whole choosing thing, people are like, oh, I'm chosen, and like my mom was chosen, and they were starting to choose me and to reveal more secrets and more revelations to us, and it's exciting. And I was realizing it's like it's pretty sad that we're craving that. What word? It's almost like some type of crumb of love or admiration or something to be like, oh, I do matter, because we have been systematically beaten down. So it's almost like, oh yeah, so yeah, you do matter, and we lick it up like it's just like our life-giving water. When I'm saying that we matter already, and we actually have so much more to us than what we're being told, and these beings lifting us up and saying, oh, let me have access to you, and then you'll be even more wonderful, and you're just so great, and I'm so great, and we're so wonderful together, and I love you, and you're my children, my brethren, and this and that, when they are attaching themselves to you and taking from you in ways that you might not be aware of. And sometimes, sadly, people are agreeing to this. Actually, too often people are agreeing to this. And it doesn't mean that they're going to go to a really great place after death. Or, yeah, it's probably going to be death, because they won't have enough structural integrity and light quotient to really get themselves beyond, because they're being drawn by something else. So with these people, some of them do get a measure of healing. It's all variable. Everyone's different. And some people are pretty darn fragmented. And so some of these measures of healing through the means of these death science-y gods are improving their structure some because they were pretty low. Or they get, some good things happening in their lives and say, see, God's looking out for me. It's all good. But they will likely leave you alone. They won't really kick up a fuss in your life because you're already giving your lives away to them. When you stand against it, when you really fight for yourself, there's going to be some struggle initially. They're going to be like, what? Oh, am I losing someone now? Am I losing some food here? Sorry to be so bold with that to you, but there will be problems. And I was harassed for a while. My mom was harassed, and people I know coming out of religion get harassed. But honestly, it's so much more freeing to do so, and you gain so more after the temporary trial period, and you really start feeling shifted away and access a whole other part of you, that this aligned flow. And I still have my chronic immune disorders, which they say they're diseases, but I don't like going that far because in my mentality, I still have a lot of health issues, but my natural light quotient is actually pretty high because I don't lose my intention. I don't lose my drive, and I put my anchor into my core. I put it in myself, and through that to the very origin of actual eternal flow, to actual there, the purest conscious essence that I explain in my books. That is my anchor. And when I know what that distinct essence feels like to me, because it's like when you're meeting, it's almost like when you're meeting a person and, and you shake hands, or like when you love one, and then that love flows, but we're still distinctly separate beings, but the energy can go through you and you feel that, but you're still you and they're still them. And I feel that extension meet me through my core and then radiate through my entire being. And I know distinctly it comes from, and I have connected with some other eternal energies, and I know exactly where those come from. And my point is that we can place these things and we can organize them instead of just subsume them into this big confusing whatever. And we don't have to say, oh, it's just a mystery, or I'll never know, and it's too big for me, and it's too hard. It's like, well, remember, like, you have this ability in yourself. You have these gauges. You have this pure intention and this genuine nature, and you do have some innocence, regardless of what religions are telling you. Like, oh, you have so many lives, and this, you're now just paying for all of your mistakes. And like, no, the abuses happen to me because they happen to me, because other beings, other people really hurt me, and I could not control that. Like, I could not accept that I somehow orchestrated that, or it's like a divine plan. This stuff was evil, and it took me a while to actually honor that reaction of myself and know that and say I was innocent. And there is innocence even as an adult. We have innocence in us. And it's the most beautiful thing to know that we have something that can guide it, because we don't have an ulterior motive. We don't have something in us that wants to cloud it or shape it to something else. We just get to know it for what it is. And then we have that connection. And then that's what now we're shifted toward. Like, I'm shifted toward that now. And so whatever will happen in a natural way, in a beautiful way for an ascension process, I already know it, and I'll just intuitively go to it. It's not in my mind. I don't have to look for something. It'll happen because I'm honoring and the purest part of me, and living by that as best I can, regardless of whatever mistakes I correct myself. I feel I'm like, that wasn't the best. So I'm being my own. I'm managing myself, moderating myself. in this process. So I hope people realize that it's just dangerous here. And I know that we realize that. It's more just like, it's dangerous, so just really protect yourself, protect your body, protect your field, honor yourself, love yourself. And let's see. And we have a foundation template with the ability to become eternal beings when we are truly living with pure and loving intention. So I would like to just say this, that we all have the tool and core energy we need within us to fill and significantly heal any emptiness we may feel. We really do not need any channeler, prophet, medium, or psychic to give us another entity-directed message. We can actually reach the purest conscious essence in existence when we truly desire to experience it as it is, not as how we want to reframe it in our density. So I think I pretty much covered a lot of what I wanted to say right now. There's, of course, a lot more, but I just want people to honor and get to really know who they are inside and work to get out of this confusing false self, externalized way. It's even like using their cones or of the chakras, like close that off and go really within and sense the own energies and the communication within you, not a voice, and honor those subtleties and make those subtleties bigger in you because they've been repressed. And we've been in abuses, especially at a young age, fragment across our brain, and they become unconscious. Like, there's so many things. It's time now to just become more whole. And we can be whole enough. And that doesn't mean that we're going to be entirely healed and have all of our DNA right now working, because there's still the netting. But we can work around it, diminish it, solve it the best we can. Just don't give up. That's pretty much what I want to say.
We should give a head nod to Ashiana Dean, because there's a lot of references in the Eternal Humans book to that material. So that was one of the things I noticed when I read Eternal Humans, is that I kept thinking, gosh, I wish I would have read the 2 Ashiana Dean books first. And even then, I think maybe I would have been at a little bit of a loss, because actually you do reference some of the subsequent material that they put out through the organization that they created after those 2 books were published. But mostly my question was about, for your purposes, you wrote The Eternal Humans and Finite Gods, and now we have another book proposing a new cosmology beyond death science. So I was curious as to what was the motivation for writing that book subsequent to Eternal Humans, if that's correct.
Well, a friend actually gave me the idea to create a smaller book because it's so big, and I really felt like, since that's more the main. I mean, there's many themes in my books, but this one is something that was more revolutionary in a way, and toward actual describing what eternal science is. So I felt like I needed to just be more concise with that and present more scientific ideas, and so I didn't include that all in my 3rd edition or 2nd edition. But I also I used most of it. So when I was doing my 3rd edition and then doing the 2nd edition cosmology book kind of side by side, I was like, oh, well, I should pretty much say pretty much the same thing, just because for whatever audience is open for what. So it can be somewhat redundant. But the cosmology book is a complete book in itself, tailored almost like a research thesis for the scientific community, and talking about topics not as liberally like I do in the large book, more in like the religious side. I keep it more toward the skeptical public and give some more theoretical physics concepts. Just go a little deeper. And so, yes, I do reference Ashiana Dean's work a lot. My motivation to do so is just because I found, as I was researching, that her material gave the biggest depth the most, I guess, meat and sources of the whole New Age oneness, law of one paradigm. And so there's other groups like the 5 Law of One books given by the Ra group, which is headed by Marduk, the Anunnaki. And so that is what people are most familiar with. But I said, that's just a faction. I've gone through enough factions of Christianity, so I like to go to the root, to the source. And so Ashayana's stuff actually goes to higher dimensional races and older beings that actually started. And I want to go right to the beginning, and that's what I divulge. And so I'm getting actually some interference right now because I'm talking about this, so go away. Serious.
It happens on Skype, too.
Oh, it happens. So, yes, so I was initially pretty diplomatic when it came to her stuff, like in my first edition, but I was still learning a lot. And so I realized, oh my gosh, I need to really watch her workshops more closely and understand it. And I was understanding more over time too. And so then at the 3rd edition, I just got more critical and a little more bold. Yeah. And so you can read her stuff, but it's just like I kind of present a lot of it already with it. I think I did it more justice by clarifying a lot because it kind of jumps around a lot with her stuff. It's confusing stuff. So I clarified it and then I critiqued it. But that's just my view. Yeah. But definitely people can read her stuff.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't feel like I was totally lost not having read her stuff first, but I just felt like I would benefit, like me personally, with the way my mind works and the way I research things and read books, that I probably would have felt more prepared to digest what I was reading had I read her stuff first. But anyway, I've known about her for quite a while. I've seen some of the interviews and what have you. And people could figure that out for themselves. I don't think I would necessarily recommend that they get her books first, then yours. I think yours stands on its own quite well. Although for my purposes, I would like to read it again, especially read it again without like one of my motivations for reading it the way I read it was in preparation for this interview. So I read it pretty fast. I really I plowed through it because I did want to read it cover to cover first.
Okay.
And I don't have the I mean, and I don't have the benefit of doing that with a lot of the interview subjects. I will get their book. I've done that a lot. Like if you go back and look at a lot of my interview subjects, like David Jacobs, for instance, he wrote a book called Walking Among Us. I read his book first, but there's a lot of people I've done interviews with, and I've gotten their book, but I haven't been able to read it cover to cover. I was able to skim it. I'm a pretty good skimmer, but I don't hang my head on my skimming abilities really, because you will miss things, important things sometimes.
Yeah, so. I'm hoping people will actually read it. I know it's long, but I just felt like I had to cover a lot of things to be more thorough. Yeah, so it is what it is.
And I lament that we're not in a generation of readers anymore. Like I'm older, so like when I grew up, it was really common for younger people to read a lot. I mean, my sister was just, she had her nose buried in a book all the time. And now with cell phones and whatnot, and we just don't have readers too much anymore. And I know for a fact that if there were more readers, we probably would be in better shape. Humans in general would be in better shape than they are now. Just, that's just my opinion. But
well, I agree. I mean, that's why I wrote a book. I could formulate my thoughts a lot more clearly, a lot more deeply that way. Not everyone's a great speaker, and just even thinking off a script is you kind of can't cover everything. Mm-hmm. It's just I want to be as professional as I can be, as precise as I can be, and of course I'm still learning. But that's what academia does. They write papers, they do their work, their due diligence. It's just what I want to uphold that standard.
Yeah. Is your mom a writer too? Does she write?
No.
No, she doesn't.
No.
Okay.
She does. She tries, but I tend to edit it.
Oh, she's intimidated. That's okay. I get.
No. It's just not her strong suit. But she's very thoughtful and very smart and wise in her way. So it's fine.
Well, one of the things I did like about your book is like, and this is a little crass, but I'm going to tell it like I see it. Is that no one was left standing. I mean, there was just really all the sacred cows are dead. They're out in the field, but they're all dead. There wasn't one left. There wasn't one cow left. And I thought, this is cool. This is brave. This is wonderful. And I respect that, because I mean, there was a lot of things in there I don't agree with, but that doesn't matter. We talked about that. If somebody wants to hear about that, well, they can interview me. That's not the place for this, as far as I'm concerned. This is your platform, and I think people would benefit by reading this book, because it is very, like you say, it's a call to return to our own inner knowing, which I think is helpful. Even in light of the things where there is disagreement. But so for me, it's very refreshing, because there is a lot of go along in this whole New Age, light worker, disclosure community. There's a lot of herding, HERDING going on.
Yeah.
And it's detrimental. It's not a good thing. So so that was what my motivation for doing this interview was, that, and I wish I had more people out there that I could do interviews like this with, because it's a message that is sorely needed. I think, it's just my opinion, but so thank you.
I appreciate that.
Yeah.
Well, thank you, and I don't mind disagreements. I would like us to get to that stage in ourselves where we can just be thoughtful and just present our views without attacking. Right. And playing the victimizer game or anything. And if we disagree, okay, but let's find a way still to coexist well, to still take care of ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
We're still unique individuals, so that's what I maintain. And I wish we could be more mature in how we handle each other nowadays.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
and I think that's another thing that reading does too. Is it helps people to kind of settle down and have that perspective, rather than looking at YouTube videos or being on Facebook or someplace like that, where it's like the divide and conquer theme is more prevalent there.
Yeah, I actually don't really want to argue or defend. Like, I don't know how to do the outreach thing so much. I don't have the desire to go to forums and debate my cause, because I look for discussion. Mm-hmm. I look for an openness to see how we can meet, versus just like, my idea is awesome, you listen to me or leave. I'm doing a PG version here. So,
well, that's one of the other benefits of having written a book, is that you present your case, you took the time to do so. So just in the act of doing that gives you some credibility, rather than out there cherry picking a bunch of stuff, creating your own internal cosmology, and then going out and arguing with people about it. It's like it's a different world, and you've created that world for yourself that gives you some credibility. And if someone wants to contend, you could say, well, read my book and we'll talk.
Yeah, please take the time. I spent much of my life doing this, so I'd appreciate some time from yours to meet me a little.
Yeah.
We can talk about it. Yeah. That'd be nice.
Okay, well, so I'm really glad we did this. Is there anything else that you'd like to add before we close, or and the other thing I want to say publicly is that we talked earlier about the interview and stuff. I said, gosh, you wrote a 600-page book. You wrote, there's no, because Theresa did prepare an outline for this interview, which a lot of people don't do. But at the same time, it's like there's no way to really do the book, the work, the time that you've spent in creating all this in just a short interview. So what I did want to say is that, I'll put this interview together. I'll send you the link like I do with everybody. You get to look at it. We can edit things out or whatever. But I wanted to say is that, given that this is just a little snapshot in time, 2-3 months from now, you may go, what, we should have talked about this. And so I want to make an open invitation, especially if this video does go public, to do a follow-up interview with you, if that's something that you want to do, because that happens. You'll go, wow, I should have talked about this or whatever. So this isn't a closed door. This isn't just like, here's Theresa, bye, you'll never see her again, So.
No, thank you so much. I really appreciate that. And
Yeah.
I just talked about what I felt I needed to for just this introductory one. So if there's questions, I'll see how your audience responds. I know I make some claims and bold assertions that might not be so welcomed by some people, but I just did, and I hope that I'll be there and I'll be willing to work with people if they're willing to work with me. And so I wrote the outline, but then whatever came out of me, how my mind did it, I was kind of jumping around, so it ended up being a little short, actually. I'm shorter than I thought it'd be.
Yeah. That's
so
okay.
yeah, I'm definitely open to coming back and discussing.
Okay. All right, that's great. All right, well, with that, I would like to thank everybody for joining us, and especially Theresa for joining me today. And my hope is that our next one will be an in-person interview, which you never know. That could happen. Okay. That would be very nice. I would enjoy that. And
okay, all right, I hear you.
So just for the energy and the fact that we don't have to do this on Skype, which can be a little temperamental at times. So thanks again, Theresa, very much for doing this with me. I appreciate it.
Thank you so much, Denny, and I wish you everyone all the best.
All right. Okay. Thanks, everybody. Bye-bye.
Okay. Bye.